Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us.
As we look at this notion of rain gardens, basecaping, and urban forest, we're definitely in built environments. Almost 80% of the American population, and in some countries a much higher percentage than that, are living in the built environment, are very urbanized areas. But what we're doing through the urban forest, basecaping, and the rain gardens is that we're what we're calling inviting the whole of nature to flourish within the built environment. And what we're doing is that we're looking at everything that surrounds us in these urban areas. That some of these have been around for 2 and 3 centuries, 200 to 300 years. And so many non-natives have been brought into North America. And we can see these on the left-hand side and how shallow their root structures are. And when you see the fescue turf, there's virtually no root structure. And then we look at the right side, and these are just examples of native species. And we're not even going to name all these because there's dozens and hundreds and thousands of these in every community around the United States and abroad. And these have very deep roots. And the reason for that is they adapted over centuries and maybe millennia to their traditional areas. And so they know how to adapt to drought, to heavy rains, and at the same time to be able to capture, sequester water in the ground, to be able to draw that up when they need it during the dry seasons. And so we definitely want to be moving to native species in every locality around the globe, and to rid ourselves of the non-natives, or what are called affectionately invasive species, which we want to get rid of. Now, we've seen this before, but the importance of this whole thing of inviting the whole of nature to flourish is how do we recreate what this may have been like centuries ago before the settlers moved into these areas. And these were either savannas or heavy forest. And so the water that would come down from the sky, the rainfall, would be captured and would be holding in the ground. And by the time it would make its way to the streams and the rivers out into the Chesapeake Bay, this is specifically for Washington, D.C., is that the velocity would be greatly slowed down and probably less amount of flooding, where when you start having a built environment where you have hard-packed clay, which is really the same as concrete, with little moisture, no oxygen in the soil. So you don't have the microorganisms actually to feed the soil and to take it from dirt into soil. And then we have these impervious surfaces, parking lots, streets, roads, stairwells, walkways, everything that's not allowing moisture to be absorbed, captured, put into the ground, and then allowed to be released slowly. These impervious surfaces really are destroying nature and destroying the environment itself. and also decreasing the amount of water we have available for drinking because much of it becomes polluted in these areas. But this will give you an idea of the dramatic change that's happening in the prototype gardens that we put right here in Washington, D.C. These prototypes now are being shared across the African continent and Latin America, South Pacific, Asia, Europe, and even cities, towns, villages across the United States. But this will give you an idea of how the change has happened already by capturing and taking the runoff from the roof of this home in a built environment and channeling that into the swell, which is in the rain garden. This is about 2 feet below the surface of the previous yard. Went down 2 additional feet to break up the hard packed clay and then to mix in almost a ton of mulch, 1 ton of mulch. This was chopped up bark that was used in this case. Also, you could use leaves, chopped up newspapers, anything that's a type of a biomass could be used in order to put into the hard packed clay mixed, and that allows the water to be captured, stored, and then processed, slowly released throughout the water table and also into the aquifers. But this was after the second day of this rain garden actually being installed. We ended up having 9 inches of rain. And you can see the mulch that's on the surface of this to keep this from flooding. The native species were actually planted here. There's several non-native species that we allowed to stay because of the age and the root structures they have to process the water. But you can see how this swell was able to capture all this water. All of this would have run off of this surface, gone right into across the yard, out into the alleyway, into the storm drain, and most likely right out into the Potomac. We had 9 inches of rain. That is a huge rainfall. And this rain garden, brand new, only been installed for 2 days. Actually, by the end of the rainfall, the water was to the edge of the top of the swell. I thought, oh no, we're going to have flooding. Guess what? No flooding whatsoever, no runoff from this. And because of that, and the amount of water was not coming out from the downspout from the roof, the pavers over to the right-hand side were actually able to capture and store the water that was coming from the rain. And then you can see the urban forest. These were native species trees that were planted that have these water bladders at their base. And you can see also, too, the basecaping, which we actually turned those into storm water rain control to the back and to the side. And so all of this now has become a water capture, process, store, and slowly released system right here as a prototype for all these different areas. This is a close-up. This is absolutely amazing as the swell began to fill with water. It was slowly releasing it into the ground area, which had never happened before because all this water would come off the roof around the sides of the house and then just flow out into the alleyway to the top of this photograph. But you can see this is actually capturing this. This is probably after about 4 inches of rain has fallen. You can see where the pavers to the right-hand side of this are actually slowing down that rainfall and capturing it in the spaces in between the pavers. And then you see the native species trees and these water bladders that were planted about 2 weeks before this heavy rainfall. And then also you can see the basecaping gardens to the immediate back, right below the rain garden, and the one to the right-hand side. So again, this gives you a close-up of what this entire system looks like, as far as the rain garden in the front, taking all the stormwater off the roof, capturing it, letting it go through the trough that you can actually see through the clear water there at the bottom of the photograph. And then the excess would flow underground into the large and the small basecaping gardens, and also out to the trees. And it's absolutely amazing to watch the rainfall. We think of rain coming straight down, and then it's going to flow on the incline. Where these trees are, it's almost like the water has been trained to flow towards the root balls, because these were actually planted 6 to 8 inches below the surface instead of putting them in as a mound, which moves the water away from the trees. We actually planted these, as is going on across much of India these days, and the new plantings were 6 to 8 inches below the surface. And then mulch was put in on top of the openings above the root ball. And then these become little rain gardens in themselves. It's amazing, amazing system. This will give you an idea. This is actually about 12 months later. You see in the early spring here how these native species that were very small and were put in about 12 months before this actual scene here, and how they're actually expanding and growing in this space. This gives you an idea of looking at this rain garden and the complexity of it, but yet very, very simple. This will process, as I said, the 2 days after this was installed, it processed 9 inches of rainfall. You see the trough in the bottom, which actually takes the water from the roof, slows it down through the smaller stones in the base of this, and then this overflows out into the rain garden. And you can see the mulch, which actually also helps to capture, slow down the rain, and sequester that into the soil. This will give you an idea of the whole system. The pervious surface, because of the space of about anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 inch in between the slate, allows the water to go in and be captured and processed. But this will give you an idea of the photographs and how that the native species are growing very nicely within this area. This is in the second year in the spring, and so a new coating of mulch has been placed on this. And also the old mulch from the year before when this was installed was actually mixed into the dirt to allow more of the biomass to be absorbed. And this is about 13 to 14 months, and you can see how vigorous these plants are during a rainstorm. And the trees that were planted, these urban forest trees, actually grew 2 feet in the first year and have grown already another 2 feet in this year. This will give you an idea looking down into the rain garden and the basecaping in the back, and just how prodigious all of these plants are and capturing and processing the water. So they're taking the rainfall, the dew, the mist, transferring it through the roots into the soil. And these are very deep penetrating root plants. Close up of these plants, very beautiful, and also are carbon capturing plants as well. So they're fixing carbon and moisture into the soil and holding both. And so the carbon that's going into the soil actually is now feeding the roots with its natural energy. Beautiful, beautiful rain gardens and basecaping. This is the wave of the future. Thank you for letting us share with how inviting the whole of nature to flourish and a built environment as we create the Emerald Planet.